Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Love Food Podcast. And today we are joined by Skye Conway. Let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. After being sick for 32 years of her life, she tapped into and discovered the raw foods diet. And this led to a massive transformation in all areas of her life. And she now shares the raw vegan journey that she's been on with many others on her Instagram. I believe it might be Raw Skye or Skye Conway if you search for that. Skye, is there anything else you'd like to say about yourself as an introduction?
Hi, everybody. So, yeah, that was great. Thank you. My name's Skye, and I was sick most of my life. And I have this passion now for raw foods because once they entered my life, my health, my life, my whole world changed. So, yeah, that's kind of me and what I like to do and why I want to talk about raw food so much.
Excellent. So let's talk about that journey and your background and how did you grow up? What was your lifestyle like?
Sure. So growing up, I was sick a lot of the time. I was sick from about the age of 8 with many different diagnoses and problems going on, from viruses to chronic pain, chronic fatigue, congenital disease, hormonal problems. It was like a constant. But in our household, we ate um, pretty healthy. I mean, once you discover that what I feel healthy is,
Yeah.
I've changed my mind on that. But in Australia, we eat a lot of, like, I guess, salads, vegetables. We'd have a meat dish at dinner, sandwich for lunch.
Mhm.
Breakfast was some sort of cereal. It wasn't a heavily processed diet. And that's how I grew up. And when I was sick, I did go to naturopaths, and they did change my diet, but never to raw foods. It was more cooked foods, but cutting a lot of different food groups out. And obviously, nothing really made a huge impact, not a big enough impact on my health. Um, so yeah, I grew up that sort of way. And towards the end, before I found the raw foods, I was vegan and I'd also was paleo, and neither of those made a huge impact. In fact,
When
I got sick on both.
when did the health issues start?
When I was 8, I contracted chickenpox, and it was just a normal dose, like a normal chickenpox. I'd been healthy as a child before this. And then when I went to go back to school, I couldn't get through a week of school. I would have to come home um, by Friday. And then after a few months, I'd be getting home by Thursday. And after a couple of years, I would only get to Tuesday. And the doctors, I had massive glands swelling out here. The doctors didn't know what was wrong. I was told it was glandular fever, chronic fatigue. Um, and I guess maybe looking back, they would say Epstein-Barr. But in the end, I went to an ear, nose, and throat specialist after about 2 years of this going on. And they said my tonsils had been eaten away by a bacteria, and I'd never had tonsillitis. But they said you need to have them removed. There's not much left. And when we're in there, if your adenoids don't look great, we'll take them out too. So I went and had this done, and progressively over about 6 months after this time, I started to improve to a point where I was what you call a normal child again, a healthy
Hmm.
child again. And that went on for about 4 years. Though there's still, when I look back, things that went on in my life that I wouldn't consider normal. Like I had growing pains so bad that my leg was put in a cast. I got a pinched nerve in my neck for like 6 weeks with a neck brace, but relatively, I was well for that period of time.
Hmm. And at, at what point did you start to go towards diet and lifestyle? I mean,
Sure.
I assume there might have been other things you tried before that.
Sure. So because I was what I would call well, diet didn't even come into it. I mean, even at school or any doctor, diet wasn't to do with any of my problems. So I was told and believed. When I was 16 and 17, I went into chronic pain. This is where I found out years later I had a congenital disease in my pelvis and back. I had many surgeries for it. And around this time, I was trying diet just with naturopaths. Like they were saying, cut this out, take this out. But as I said, nothing made an impact, a big enough impact. I was still just desperate for some sort of miracle answer. I was in a lot of pain. Like I could hardly go to school. From here, they found the disease, took out the disease. It was like a second piece of uterus that they took out. And they hadn't seen this happen before. And I was pain-free then for about 3 years. But when I say pain-free, during that time when the pain came back, I ended up having a perforated ulcer. I lost my stomach, my duodenum, more of my intestines. Came through that. What happened after that? Then after that, my pain came back. I had full-time carers, couldn't work, was on massive doses of pain medications. Like I think every pain medication there was. I was on ketamine, pethidine. When I went to hospital, I was on those too. I was on fentanyl, OxyContin, oxycodone, Valium, stimulants, antidepressants, hormones, stomach medications. And this is about the age of 30. Wow. And at this point, the surgeons discovered they'd put me in a chemical menopause, and they discovered my pain subsided. But by this stage, I'm not I can just make it to the toilet. That's it. So I said, I want a hysterectomy. I can't do more chemicals. I can't do a drug for the rest of until I'm 50, until I go into menopause. So they did that. And I felt better again. So because this chemical menopause took away my pain, I had a lot going on still, but the idea was once that went, I was going to heal. Once I had the hysterectomy, I went through menopause, and that was horrible. The pain had gone, but I was very ill. And as I came off all these pain meds, it was like my body was shutting down. I was, you have withdrawals, even a slight reduction. I would have low blood pressure, fainting, vomiting to constipation. All other problems started to come up with my heart. I ended up only 37 kilograms. And I was in ICU a couple of times because they didn't know what was going on, and they were trying to help me. And at this stage, diet still had not come into it at all. The only role that diet played was I was forced to, they were monitoring. I was constantly at nutritionists because I was so underweight. And the only thing I was forced to have was 3 times a day protein shakes. And these really made me feel sick because they're high sugar. And the way my digestive system works, if I have concentrated sugar in liquid, it dumps. It's called dumping syndrome. I had that as well, and then the sugar rushes in, my heart palpitates. I then have to lay down. So there's lots going on, but that's the only role diet's playing. Then I had like a break with reality and lost a lot of my memory of what had been occurring, like a trauma response. With this, I'd come off the rest of my medication, but I started to get better very quickly. And with this, I went on a paleo diet. And with that paleo diet, there was nuts, seeds, cooked fruit, vegetables, and a meat dish at night. That was my diet for about a year. And I did okay on that 1 year. I will say I was eating a higher amount of raw foods than I ever had. I was going to the gym. I was working, but I was very disconnected. There was a lot of block still going on, a lot medically. At the end of that year, I got shingles through my eye, through the trigeminal nerve. At this point, I couldn't, it was a normal bout of shingles, like the chicken pox as a child. It was afterwards. Next minute, I couldn't get up, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't dress myself, couldn't do anything. That's where I had to go to a neurological hospital, relearn to do all of these things. And it was around this point where I had severe PTSD, but it was also where I became vegan. I didn't want to eat. It felt like this sort of awakening going on ever since I kind of lost my memory or couldn't remember a lot of what had happened. It was like I had to really rediscover myself. And there was a big calling not to eat anything that had a face that, you don't eat no one would eat my child or one of my limbs. Why should I eat something else's? These were all questions that I started to feel really conscious about.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing this through hospital. So you just put on the forms you're vegan. And so I was eating vegan. And at this point, I had 9 mental health hospital visits. One of them was 10 months. I was really suffering with PTSD. It was 10 months. I didn't go home for 10 months except for a couple of weekend visits. And I had like one-on-one care. I just was reliving a lot of what I'd been through. I guess medications might have blocked it for a while. I'm not sure. The other thing being, since I went on the vegan diet, is the protein. My blood stopped making all the proteins it was testing. So my blood test kept coming back with these really strange anomalies. This is so normal for me at this stage, though. I'm always told something is not right in my body. So there's another thing going wrong. So they bring in more nutritionists and they said I was eating really well. Like I was eating, and remember, I don't have a stomach here, but I was really eating well. And they said you could increase your protein with nuts and seeds, but we haven't seen this before. They didn't know why. Anyway, come out of this and I get home and I am eating a vegan diet, but I start drinking to cope with this PTSD. And within a couple of months, I end up with liver problems, rushed to hospital again, and I'm in there for a couple of weeks with all these infusions. I come out of this and mum and dad say to me, you need to live on your own. We can't care for you anymore. This is all too much for us. So when I lived by myself, it was during COVID, I'd have just fruit and vegetables delivered. It was easier to eat just fruits or salad. If I cooked something, it was very basic. It was like dry roasted pumpkin or steamed cauliflower. It was very, very simple. What I noticed was, so I might go a few days with just having the fruits and salads and a little bit of cooked food, maybe some date bars, which are still all raw. And then when I ate the cooked meal, it was like literally making myself sick. I would go back to bed. I would not be able to do anything. My heart was racing. I felt horrible. And I'm like, what is going on? Like it was so heavy. The way to say it's like putting like something real. And anyway, I was still not able to really get well. And when I would eat the salads and fruits, I was like, wow, I can hang the washing out and then I could bring it in. Like it was very slow at the start, but I could do things for the first time in my entire life. So the question then came to me, Skye, what are you willing to do for your health? And my answer to myself was anything. I'd been through like so much. To eat raw foods was not going to be a big challenge after all I'd been through. So I had at this stage was still not able to really read or write or concentrate for big periods. So I couldn't read what I was doing, like any scientific data. All I could do was kind of get online and see on Instagram that there were vegans called raw vegans, and they made these beautiful big fruit platters or these beautiful, salads, and they were brightly colored. And I was like, right, I can do this. So that is where the food element of it came in. I just simply discovered that I felt a lot better. Look, it was like night and day when I ate raw foods. And if I ate even just simple cooked foods, I couldn't make improvements.
Do you think a lot of the medical interventions made your situation worse rather than better?
That's an interesting question. Possibly, but a lot of them,
Because
I can't.
you're mentioning having did you say you don't have a stomach? Is that what you
Yes,
and a
yeah,
duodenum?
yeah. That was emergency surgery though. So I had a perforated ulcer in the duodenum that had bled out. And they went in, I've got a scar all the way down here. They tried to cauterize it twice and then it burst again. So they had to remove different areas. I will say that I was so desperate when any medical intervention was done. And I believe they thought they were doing the right thing. they probably still do. They probably do it to people that I don't know whether I could have survived mentally without some of the relief I got from the medical professionals.
What about the stomach? You say you don't have a stomach.
Yes. So they when I got the perforated ulcer, it all rotted in the duodenum. So you have most people have a stomach that digests this way. They took mine out. There was a slither left of it, but it's now just all one piece. They took out the next level, which is the duodenum, and they took out more of the intestine. So when I eat, it's like one big esophagus type thing that goes a tube that goes all the way down and then dumps straight into the intestines.
Wow. That's that how I don't even know like it, and that's very different obviously, but I'm surprised that that works.
Yeah, I think it's another credit to the human body as to
Right,
just
okay.
all it's capable of, right? And I'll tell you, when I went raw within 2 months, so I had that surgery 15 years prior to going raw. So it's quite an old scar. It's a massive scar. They went in 3 times into the same
Hmm.
scar. 3 months into eating raw foods, I went to my mum and dad's and I started to roll my finger across the scar and I could feel a massive chunk. It would be like keloid scarring, like kind of flapping away. So it had broken off. And I said to mum, this is so odd. And she said to me, she goes, you're going to have to see a doctor about that. And I'd been eating raw foods. And I said, I think that's how I ended up with all these problems.
Yeah.
So I think that's the worst thing I can do. But I think what happened is when I went on this diet, and I hear a lot of like a lot heals can heal very quickly, especially at the start, like a lot of old things which can just
Hmm.
be away type thing. So I think like it was interesting that had been there for so long, but within just raw foods for a couple of months, massive chunks of scar. So now that
Wow.
scar is wide. It's like a tiny, tiny line. So all the mass underneath has come away. Up the top, it's still there, but it's amazing.
Wow. Wow. I
Yeah.
mean, it's such a traumatic story. I mean, how how was all that triggered, do you think? What was the very first moment of that? Maybe I didn't catch it, but it was the ulcer, that was the thing that started the whole process of your health downfall.
No, it was the chicken pox.
Oh, wow.
So it was a couple things actually. So I had chicken pox at the age of 8. And that was just normal chicken pox. But afterwards, it was like this chronic fatigue response in the body that never left, like chronic tiredness. My glands are out like this. And that was when they did they removed the tonsils and that relieved something. And I was better, but I was never like I was beforehand. The other thing that occurred to me, which I was born with, was a congenital disease called endostomatosis, which essentially they hadn't seen before, but it was just a second piece of uterus which had lodged itself on a ligament and then kind of grown. But what that meant is when I was 8, when this chickenpox thing happened, is this is where our bodies, when we're young, prepare for puberty. So we build, you're getting the hormones already. And if your body has two sex organs there, your mapping is the excess estrogen, and that is a pain, it's an acid. So basically what they're kind of saying is from that age, this is why this all happened around here. Then
Okay.
I had an interview recently with somebody who said there's a small percentage of people who get chicken pox and there's some link to hormones with a problem they never recover from it. She did a study, she's a naturopath, and she did her thesis on it. So it's all lots going on.
And you lived with pain for a long time, I believe. Is that what you were saying?
Like the pain I was in was pelvic, so it was gynecological pain, back pain. It ended up through my face, my fingers, my hands, the
Wow.
back of my legs, and my GI tract as well. But I had some biofeedback done by a neurologist and a gynecologist that they use these machines for women giving birth to train them to learn how to lower the pain level So they put this machine on, and then you're supposed to relax, and the reading will drop, and you train yourself. So they put this machine on me, and they couldn't get a start point because the pain in my body was so loud. And at this time, I wasn't even 20.
That's crazy. How
Yeah.
how long did you live with that?
Till I was 30 was that pain. So once I was 30 and I had the hysterectomy, what I call my pain, that nerve pain, pelvic gynecological pain, that left at 30. But I was on 500 milligrams in the morning of OxyContin, 500 milligrams at night, 60 milligrams of breakthrough 4 times a day of oxycodone. I was on a fentanyl patch of 170, Valium, antidepressants, stimulants, went into hospital on ketamine. I'd have pethidine, Botox, local anesthetics. So that was then the next hurdle of what I had to overcome.
What was the cause of that pain? The root cause? Do you understand what it was?
Yeah, that was that second piece of uterus, the endostromatosis, which had, so they did a surgery and removed it, but they went back in years later, and he's left what he'd called the root, and he took that out then. But he explained to me that the wound being open, the cells in there had spread onto my bladder, my uterus, and my bowel, and then they cause more of like
Jeez.
that response. So when he took the rest out, it was too late. It had already kind of, and I was so inflamed. I was,
It's terrible.
yeah. You know what was the most terrible was I know this sounds really horrible, but I always wished I had something like cancer or something, because nobody knew what was going on. There was no
Yeah,
answer. I
no.
was in so much pain. It was like nobody believed. I don't even know whether I believed. It was not a definitive diagnosis, and I wanted something, where you, even if you need
Yeah,
dialysis, you go to a set department, you go to a
yeah,
set
yeah.
doctor. It was never like that for me. I was all over the place.
So for 10 years, so basically you probably couldn't really have a life.
No, I didn't. So from the age of 16 up until 30, I was, most of my time was spent in bed. Just
Oh,
about the time I could was spent in bed. And then after that, I was still in bed by this stage because of what it had done to me. And the year that I got well, I remember I was saying, like, I did paleo for a year, and I went to the gym and I worked. Because I kind of lost my memory, my body had some ability to function. It was very, very strange. Like, it's not, I couldn't do much, even with my cognition. Everything was very, like, it was keeping me in some sort of,
yeah.
you know, life support type thing. And then once it came back, I went downhill.
It must have been really taxing to your nervous system to be going through essentially pain for 10 years, like for a constant time. Um,
Yeah.
is there a kind of a recovery process from that? I mean, how does that shape you, and how do you, I don't know, how do you get over that?
So that's a really important question, because when you're in chronic flight or flight, my brain works like this. So if I had to right now get from just here to the door, it would go, have you taken your pain medication? Have you taken your long-term pain medication? Have you put enough heat on it? Is anyone around if you're going to walk? While you're up, do you need to go to the toilet? Okay, grab your hot water bottle. You can make it. You can do it. That is how my brain worked if
Yeah.
I had to do anything for all I could remember, really. So when the pain goes, you literally don't know how to live. And then your brain starts to adapt a trauma response to things. Like at the start, it can kind of remember, and also all the medications are coming away as well. Like, so it's like trying to relearn. I did try and study psychology for about 5 years. I never completed it, but I feel reading about what the body and mind react, just knowing what they do was helpful to get through that. But then eventually it was like the PTSD was too much and I couldn't function. Plus there
Mhm.
was whatever happened after the shingle. So, but that is the hard part, is trying to learn how you just sit, Because now I can sit by the beach and I can remember as a little girl that I would run by the water, and the feeling of the salt air. That is, if you're coming off some long-term disease, you're not going to feel that for a while, but you've got to keep persevering. So you've got to keep what I believe is exposure. So you keep going back to things that you know are safe, like sitting by the beach, and eventually you kind of settle.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And you said you had like a kind of a break from reality in that time. Was that a response to the trauma of that whole situation?
To be honest, it was like, I've never really talked much about this. So I was living at home. No one thought I was going to make it. I think you've seen photos of me. I was 37 kilograms. No one knew why my body was shutting down. The more they took the medications away, I was just shutting down. And then I woke up one morning and it was like I was on hyper alert. um, I didn't know whether I was dead or alive. Obviously, I was alive, but I wasn't talking about this. It was just like, where am I type thing. I don't know if this makes much sense. I felt like I was in a different reality. And I really couldn't do much still. And then I just stopped talking because everyone, doctors, nurses, my parents, everyone was telling me what to do and nothing was working. And I just didn't believe in anybody anymore. So I just stopped talking as well. I didn't think about anything. I just kind of laid there. And then they put me in a psychiatric unit, and I'd come off, there was a little bit of pain meds still in going through me. So they took me off that. They put me on something else. And then those meds made me like, it was almost like hallucinate. Somehow I came out of that. But when people would ask me what had happened, I might be able to tell them a bit of it or tell them my name sometimes. Sometimes I couldn't even remember my name. I, and then, yeah. And so I do believe all of this was, everyone has a breaking point.
Right.
And that was mine. But I also see it as some sort of awakening. Like, from that point, it's like I couldn't do harm to my body anymore. Like, even when I tried, I might need a medication for a little bit, but it would be so loud that this was not right. It was like me finding my way, even though it took 5 years, 4 years, 4 or 5 years. And I went through massive, hospitalizations for mental health, had the shingles, all of that still. It was like this. No, there was no relief during that time in any way either. It was, I guess, a trauma response, but I still feel it's like we are all souls with spirit, and there was something calling me to something bigger during that time. It was
Right.
different from the
Right.
rest. The rest, there was always, at worst case scenario, they could put some sort of local anesthetic in some area. They could give me some sort of calming agent if something. But for these 5 years, it was literally like coming off everything, having to find me. And I will say this is it is so rewarding to find yourself, but it's not always easy work. But it's you've got to know that's what you're doing, I guess.
Yeah. So that being on so much pain medication for so long, is that, I mean, some of the things you're talking about there, Oxycontin, fentanyl, and things like that, there's a lot of problems with people uh, getting addicted to these things. And so
Mm,
do you understand what that is like, or do you have some of the after effects of that and some of the problems of opioid, abuse or
mm,
whatever? I mean, like, obviously it's regulated, but was it
mm.
is it way less that you would have taken than you know an addict kind of thing, or how does that work? I don't understand that.
No, the amounts I was taking were, so if you break your leg and you go to a hospital, or you wake up from surgery, they will give you 5 milligrams of, like, what we call, or maybe 10, maybe up to 40 after you first come out, right? Of something called oxycodone, right? I was taking 500 milligrams in the morning, 500 at night. And every time I went into pain during the day, I was taking 60. Then that wasn't even the fentanyl. Then we move across to fentanyl. I was on at the same time on a patch of 170 milligrams. Now, they don't give fentanyl that much, and the dosage wouldn't be the same because it's a patch. I can only talk in the endone terms. The amounts I was taking were so massive, but the pain I was in was so massive that it wasn't touching it. So, but once the pain went, that's why I think I got so sick, because my body, how that made me feel. And that's why I had to come off it. And it was making me sick every time I dropped off it. But how I felt on it was so horrible once the pain had gone. But my doctors, and I had a lot of doctors, said that they believed once my pain went, I would go off it, because I never went on it to numb emotional pain. It was always some physical
Yeah.
pain, but it doesn't make it any easier coming off it. What I have been through, like when I think back to when you grow up and you hear horror stories, you can't imagine getting through them. But then when I walked through, especially some of the moments of my life, I think of the strength I needed at the time to get through. That's what you've got to just know that there's something there, something great inside of you. You're worth coming off it for.
So when you did the hysterectomy, is that when the pain pretty much went away entirely?
Yes. Yes. So I had that at 30. So just before my 30th birthday, they tried chemical menopause, and that had a whole lot of side effects. But my pain, as I knew it, that pain that had then spread up through the entire left side, went. I still felt sick, withdrawn. I still had spasms, but this nerve pain that was all through me went. And I said, I can't stay on this drug. And I just want I'd had a lot of surgery down there. Like most of my surgery had been around this pelvic area to try and relieve a lot of pain. I said, just take it out. And it took them a long time to decide that, because I was under 30. It took you need 5 surgeons to sign off on that. And I wasn't dying in their eyes. So I feel like I was. So they did it, and I felt even better than I did on the chemicals. The menopause after that, being so young and having such high levels of estrogen as well because of what had been going on. So I went through that, and then soon after that, I just felt so horrible on these pain meds, like so. And that's when I like lost my hair, got really, really skinny, and I was always sick. So yeah, I came off the walking stick after the hysterectomy.
And so the pain was gone though at that point.
Yeah.
And so did were you saying there you had a bit of an issue coming off of the pain medication, or there was
Not
kind of a, what do you call it, like a detox from that, or?
Yeah, so there was a massive problem as physically. So
Mhm.
mentally, I wanted to come off it, because every
Yeah,
time
yeah.
so I would come off it, like you tape it amount. So you come off a small amount, and I would get sick, physically sick from that. No matter how small it was, I was so sensitive. I'd get like the vomiting, diarrhea to constipation. My bowels got so bad, I ended up having to inject to go to the toilet. In the end, I was getting so constipated from these medications. What else? My hair was falling out. I was dizzy. I then got heart problems like tachycardia. Every time I get up, my heart was racing. But when I stabilized on the meds, they were so strong. I couldn't stay there. I wanted to drop again. So yeah, that was the only problem I found with the meds. Well, only problem. I nearly died coming off them. But yeah, so that's as for the addiction side of them. Yeah, there was a tendency to that year that I was well to know that in the past, a lot of what I felt was regulated by medications. Like all of what I felt, I think was regulated. So there's that real shift of knowing that it's just sit down and have something to eat, have a glass of water, sit by a candle, by a window. You've got to really retrain. So there's that side of it. But the horror side was the how sick I got. And I think part of that was my body had been through so much with that pain. Like it was already through the ringer, and then it had to come off all the meds.
Amazing. So at what point, how long after that did you find the raw food? diet?
It was 4 to 5 years
Hmm.
um, after that first, like,
Were you able to get your life back after that? After the
uh,
hysterectomy?
no, no, no. So after the hysterectomy, I was pain free. I was just a shell of a person. I was on
Yeah.
all those meds. And then I went through the menopause, which was so horrible. After the menopause was the constant. So I never stopped being sick. That's the problem, right? Is you can't live, your brain's still in flight or fight. So I never had that period of time to just go live. Afterwards, my body's like, right now you got to get rid of the meds because you feel so sick. And then you had the withdrawal symptoms, and then more problems started to show up. And then you're back to new doctors and
Wow.
mm,
So you were still searching, I guess, for a solution.
yeah. I was, but I believed so strongly that once the pain had gone, it was just such an unusual pain. It was nothing like, people go, oh, it's a headache like you get when you get the flu or something. It was no, you couldn't. It was, so I called it my pain. And I believed very strongly that once my pain went and I came off all the pain meds, if I survived, I believed I would. That however I got well, I wanted to share with people because it's just something that is worth sharing. But then there's a real struggle. So that year that I got well, when I did the paleo diet, where I functioned at a really like basic level, is you really start to see how hard it is for a person who's been so sick to change their brain patterns to a well person.
Yeah.
That's a whole ball game that you have to wrap your head around.
Amazing. Amazing. And do
Mm.
you have support with that? Were there
So no. So when that year I really pushed every support wise, like psychology and counseling all the way. I had my family and friends. So that was a lot of support. But you get to the point where you don't want to be around hospitals and doctors. It's so triggering. So support for me in that sense, there was nothing there, but I always have had family and friends. When I discovered raw foods, I had pretty much lost everything. I was homeless when I was helped to find a place, but I was not allowed to come home. I couldn't stay anywhere. I was living in a hotel. I was not close to anybody, barely spoke to anybody. I just didn't know how the world worked. I couldn't understand how I'd been so sick and why I was getting sick again at this stage. Like, I thought, what did I do? Like, when I look at all the things I've been through, I couldn't understand how somebody got so unlucky. You know, how people
yeah.
get like a cancer or they get kidney problems and you go, oh, that's just luck, mate. How did somebody get, and finding the raw foods made me realize what I thought all along. There was something underlying here, and in my mind, it is simply inflammation. Is for some reason, whether it's a virus, whatever it was, something has become inflamed, and everything is just inflamed, right? And once I've this is what I strongly believe is I've seemed to stop a lot of the inflammation, and that has stopped a lot of the what we call disease response in the body, and healed. And in many departments in the body, like as in the brain, the soul, like ailments, in my body, the way I breathe,
So
that whole package.
how did you actually find the raw foods diet and what was your
It,
transition like?
it was simply just the stumbling onto it by once, I moved out into my first home. It was COVID, foods were delivered. And because I was so sick, it was easier to eat the fruits, salads, raw foods. And then when I would eat something like just steamed pumpkin with some garlic and rosemary, or some turmeric steamed cauliflower, which was very simple as well, I was back in bed and going what I call backwards. And it was so strong when I would have it. I'm like, what's going on? And it was that. And I was saying I couldn't really read, write, or concentrate for long periods at that time. So that's when I went to the Instagram and I saw raw vegans. And I saw pictures and I was like, right, if it's raw, it must be okay. And as long as I ate the raw foods, I took steps forward in my life. So what I did was just ate whatever I wanted as long as it was raw. And it was great. For the first time, I didn't feel sick eating as well. I usually felt just not, I didn't have a great relationship with food. It never made me feel great, even before I lost my stomach. This, it was like my body was going, oh my God, I've been wanting this my whole life. Give me more. So I was doing like fruits, nuts, dried fruits during the day. And then in the afternoon, I do a big salad of like all my favorite flavors of like greens, cucumbers, carrots, maybe a little bit of chili, mango, lemon juice all through it, maybe some ginger. And then I was eating a lot of avocado. So at this stage, I was about 40 kilograms. I put on 12 kilos in a year. Um, and I was eating a lot of avocado. I stopped eating nuts relatively early, but avocados were like, and bananas and dates. My diet's very different now, but at the start, these were all, I was just giving my body anything it wanted. If it told me it wanted a hamburger, it wasn't getting that. If it said I want an avocado, 2 avocados, I was like, raw, fine. That's how my brain ran that entire
Sure.
um, year.
Sure. And what benefits did you see from the raw diet?
Oh my gosh. So first of all, I could do things, my energy, my PTSD subsided, my tachycardia calmed down. Like I couldn't walk 200 meters without my heart being at like 177. It just started to calm. I could sit without getting, I could sit on the grass, I could get outside. I used to get rashes and irritations. They had stopped. My hair started growing very quickly instead of it just dropping out every time I put like a comb to it. I felt beautiful in my body. So under the water, it stopped hurting. Like I usually was so used to, for probably most of my life, getting into things and being hypersensitive. That stopped. I also cut chemicals out at this time. I very much noticed while I did this that things like laundry detergents were becoming very strong. I'm like, whoa, I can't do that.
Mhm.
Or dishwashing liquid, whoa. So cut all those out. That helped. Um, so what else went? Oh, my GI. Came off my stomach medications. I came off my hormone replacement, which was like my lifeline. I had never been able to function, especially mentally, after I had the hysterectomy and went through menopause. There was a period I just couldn't get up until they gave me more estrogen. That went. Things like the scarring tissue just broke away. My eyes were wide. I could talk to people. I was happy around people. People said it was like a different person. Like it was like, who is this?
Mhm.
Depression went, anxiety went, PTSD lowered a lot. That took still some period, but it was so dramatic how much everything changed over just about 6 weeks.
Yeah, incredible, incredible.
Mm.
So, what is a kind of typical day for you at the moment on a with your diet?
Okay, so I like to get up and I'll do some exercise, and then I'll usually have the water of 2 coconuts. And then I'll wait a little bit, and I have been doing a lot of grapes. So I will eat a fair amount of grapes, as much as I want until I'm full, or watermelon as well. So watermelon, I can tell you, is usually about half to a quarter to half is usually what I have of a watermelon. And then for lunch, I'll have heavier fruit. So at the moment, I have either bananas or persimmons or what else, papaya.
Mhm.
And then in the afternoon, I will have a salad or a raw dish that I'll make, but I guess it's classed as, still salad type thing. So greens, cucumber, zucchini. I might have some carrots. So there might be some veggies through it as well. I like to make dressings. I also sometimes still snack on some dates. I've found that as I've gone through this, my fat need has lowered,
Mhm.
my need for hydrating fruits. So at the start, I think it was more these denser bananas and dates and avocados, a lot of it. Now I do like the coconut water, the watermelon, the grapes, papaya. That makes me feel really great. Lower fat. I do crave greens. I will say I really crave my greens. And I like veggies, but I think that's a comforting thing as we come into winter. It's really this calling more to the fruits now. But that wasn't always like that. At the start, I was eating like nuts. I was eating sauerkraut, olives, as long as it wasn't like heat applied.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed it really made a huge difference to my life.
So I'm interested in how that reacts with your digestive system because a lot of people who start eating a lot of fruit, especially watermelons and stuff, they can get a thing called melon belly, right? Where you get this
Yes.
kind of pain. And I'm kind of interested in if you don't experience that because your digestive system is so different, or if you do experience any issues like that.
Melon belly, I do, and I've worked very hard to get to the level that I'm at now. So I found, and I know people are not all for fats, but I found bananas and avocados so easy on my gut at the start,
Mhm.
right? I might get bloating lower down, but very easy to eat, and I felt really great having them. With back to the start is I wasn't able to eat as much as I can now. So when I'm starting out, you're eating smaller portions. So I don't think things like melon belly came into it. And I was eating a big variety. There's no food combining. I was like, oh, they have pineapple, yum. They have a bit of watermelon, bit of melon, you know.
Sure.
When I came further along and could read what other people were doing is um, I saw that having like starting off on hydration like watermelon. So I was trying to do days of watermelon. My digestive system went next level. I ended up back in bed with like stabbing pains, and it is melon belly. It starts as melon belly, but it got quite bad. I That was back last year in about November. And what I then did is gave myself a break from the watermelon. And now I'm able to do a couple times a week that much watermelon for one meal, as long as I eat it. So, what you must also know is if I drink a juice, because I don't have a stomach, like a holding tank, it drops straight into the intestine. The intestine, small intestine absorbs the sugar. And because there's not, sugar, nutrient, fiber, there's just sugar, nutrient, it goes straight in. And that gives me dumping syndrome. So I get that. So that's why I can't do watermelon like juice either, or any juice. But so yeah, I do get melon belly, but I've worked very hard to get to where I am. And then I might give it a rest for a couple of days. The watermelon, just do grapes, and then I'll come um, back to it. But as for my digestion, I found those like what I call like baby soft foods. Like I think of bananas were easy. Dates never had a problem. But once you get up to bigger levels, I try and do papayas now and grapes because they work. They work
Right.
really well for me.
What were some of the mistakes you think you made with the raw food diet, or did you learn it pretty quickly?
I like to think that my blessing with the raw foods was I didn't know what a lot of people know. So and I'll tell you why. So the people that come to me that I coach usually have been very sick and given up hope. They don't have the same problems as me, but they've been bedridden most of their lives. And a lot of what is stopping them even moving forward on this diet is the amount of knowledge they know about not combining this, not eating this, too much fat, oxalates. Listening to them reminds me of what I was like when I used to look at the medical industry. Is I knew so much, but it probably hindered me in all sorts of different ways. When I went into this raw diet, remember, I had not really read. I lost a lot of my memory. I was like this kind of almost like just a blob, really, that could do basic things. So I didn't have that those voices coming in going, oh, don't eat too much greens, don't combine this with that. And I do believe that plays a huge part on how our body runs. You create stress in the body, even when you're eating, even with chatter, you're not going to have smooth digestion or a smooth transition into any diet. So I had none of that. All I went off was literally my feelings. So, and remember, if it was cooked or whatever, I didn't go there. But as long as my brain told me it wanted something out of what I had learnt with the raw foods, I would eat it. I love my transition so much. I love that I had that ability to just eat whatever I wanted, get well with it. I will say there, after about a year of doing it, I look back now and I would have then, I guess, stopped eating as much fat if I know what it does now. But I don't think it's a bad thing that I was, you know what, I was size 10. I was a size, sorry,
Yeah,
an
yeah,
Australian 10. So I was quite small. I was only 60 kilos. Now I'm only 4 kilos lighter or something, or 3 kilos lighter. So it's just a matter of tweaking. But I enjoyed learning that. I think we can get the health benefits for me, and what I've learned with raw foods are so great. Don't get caught up in the small things, because your body does teach you. Like after watermelon hurts, you learn not to eat it. When you are a bit slower from too many fats, you're not going to be rushed to hospital. You will eventually want to taper back a bit. So I think it's a whole different ball game is how I feel with the raw food. So yeah, I like my transition. And I think I like to say to people, it's just a learning experience.
And what are some of your sort of tips for people that are starting off?
My tips, it depends where you're coming from. So once again, a lot of people contact me who have been very sick, and they're doing all raw, what they think is all raw, but they're like, oh, no, I have a bit of sweet potato and rice here. What I've learned with people who have been really sick, whatever the science is, I'm sure there's lots you could read about it, is once they go fully raw, even if they do eat too much fat, they are doing they are moving forward as well. They just never realize the jump. If you are already healthy and you've got irritable bowel, or you just want to improve your life, people seem to be okay with doing like raw till 4 or
Sure.
a whole foods plant-based. That's what I've just discovered myself. That's all I know. So my recommendation is, if you are very sick, however you can do it, try going raw. And if you are looking for more health, just add raw foods to a diet which is highly plant-based, is what I would suggest to people.
So you have started to help others and share it with others and get out there. And can you share with us a little bit about how that happened?
Sure. I did an interview with Gillian Berry, and so like she shared my story, and then I had lots of people contacting me saying they'd given up hope. I was kind of their hope. Like they've been through not even the same story as me, not even like this, but a continual story of things going wrong and getting sicker and sicker, and they'll have a major surgery and then more things will go wrong. And they're basically bedridden. And so I started to help a couple of people, and said, I'd like to coach you. And do you want me to coach? So I coached them, and it went really well. And so that's how I started coaching. And I also started sharing my recipes on my raw website, which is rawskye.com. Just to get, I think if you can put it out there, people will start to think about it. So the people that I've helped, all of them, the biggest dramatic change is that they're moving forward now really, really well. Some of them still have a couple of things going on in their life, but their general health, you would classify them as a healthy person now. Before they were bedridden. And I think what I'm doing really helps is because of where I've come from. A person first needs the belief
Mhm.
in something that it will work. So that I think is the belief I plant. But then, and all of these people, the only things that were stopping them was they needed someone to believe in. But secondly, they sorry, they needed somebody to believe in. Next is the foods they were eating. A lot of them thought they were eating raw. It was okay to eat cooked foods, and once you replace them, they're doing much better. So yeah, they're the things. And also if somebody is too overeducated as well, that can kind of stop them. They're the things that I notice I'm able to help people.
Great.
Yeah.
And where does that name Roar Sky come from? What does that mean?
So raw being ROAR was when as I got well, I started to feel like I was roaring through life. Like I was literally just taking off. I couldn't say it was like raw as in RAW, like raw food. It was like everything, which my motor was charged, everything I did, I could
Um,
roar through. So that's when the name Raw Skye came up. And that's when I put my website up and put the recipes up, and yeah.
with all this experience you've had, what's what do you think is the biggest lesson that you take from it all?
Love. I can't stress enough how, at the end of the day, as much as the food I put in started to lower inflammation, is this voice came inside of me, and it started talking to me like I was the most beautiful, important person on this planet, and it made me realize that I'd been looking my entire life out into the world for love. I've been looking for,
Mm.
I love that car. I love my hair. I love how that tastes, but I love how that person's doing so well. I love that, but I never loved myself. And once you are in a position to love and look after yourself, that will heal you, that will give you success, and that will make you feel like you deserve it all. So I'd say
Well,
love.
that's fantastic. And do you do you think that because I've thought that a little bit that when I started with this diet, I was already fairly positive thought, quite positive thoughts, but I do feel like there's a natural feeling of like real beautiful positive thoughts all the time, like the
Yeah.
world's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Well, like just constantly these kind of things come up into my head on this
Yeah.
diet. And have you experienced that when you talk about love, sometimes when people go on a fruit diet, they get these rushes of like gratitude and things like that. Like
Yeah.
and it's kind of a spiritual experience, or it is for many people, and a big emotional experience. Have you experienced that kind of stuff, the emotional side of it as well?
Yes, that is what I feel healed my soul, spirit, and mind. Exactly what you're saying. So before, if I was eating or doing something, the voice in my head was like, can you get from there? What about your sore leg? Look in the mirror, your hair's falling out. That was the type of chatter
Yeah,
going
yeah,
on.
yeah.
You start to eat this food, and I noticed the sun solar powered me. The more I ate it in the sun, I felt even greater. Is I was like, this tastes lovely. The colors are beautiful. I feel good.
Yeah.
Um, and that became the new Skye. So
Mm.
you're doing it so much, you just keep putting these beautiful foods in, and that beautiful voice becomes you. So when you're around people, you're like, what a beautiful day, look how beautiful that is, and I feel great. And then I feel like that was what got me well. So it's like that power of the words, but I had to have that food, and that's exactly what it's like. It's like this massive aura of gratitude constantly. I love it.
Fantastic. So, how can people learn more about you, follow you, and work with you?
Sure. So the best place to find me is at Raw Sky. So it's ROARSKYE.com. There I've also got like YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all of that. But you can find all of that at rawsky.com. And my coaching's there, there's recipes there, ebooks there. And if you have any questions, just reach out to me. There's a contact form there. Yeah.
Fantastic. Is there anyone you think we should interview next, or who would you like to hear more from?
I don't know. I I I do love, I don't know. I do. There's somebody I work with named Leanne who
Mhm.
has quite an extraordinary story. I can connect you to Leanne if you
Yeah,
like.
that would be great.
Yeah, she heard my story. She's had, yeah, been as sick as long as I have. So she's doing really well. So I'll connect you to Leanne.
Great. Maybe one last thing is the, and this might apply to you in a different way, but the social side of this, friendships, connection, community, because your life's been so different in that sense, and you probably were always a little bit held back from that to some degree. How has it affected your life socially and with relationships and family and different things to be on this
Sure.
diet that's so different?
Well, I am. I'd say if this never occurred to me, I would have been a very naturally social person. I always have been, right? But you just shut down. You don't want to, you just keep, when you're that sick, you keep letting people down all the time. So
Then,
you
yeah.
say you're going to go to a birthday and you can't get to the birthday, and you do this like 20 times and you feel so bad. You just stop doing things. You feel it better not to do things. I always had my mum, my dad. I drifted away from my sister for a period. Um, I ended up drifting away from my parents even towards the end. I had to find me. But once I found me, I now only let people in who bring me that same light that the fruits do, right? The fruits and vegetables make me feel like this great voice. So I only have those type of people. It is a challenge, but I feel like people know my story. So there's that learning part where I'm missing massive chunks of life. So when I'm like, um, I'm spending a lot of time alone, still learning. I don't find myself wanting to be around a lot of people. But look, I find everybody, when it comes to the raw community and connecting, is everyone has a journey, everyone has a story, and we all come with different parts. And that kind of, when we come together, we then form the bond that we do. So it's different, but yeah, I'm enjoying. I'm just so happy. I feel so blessed.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Skye. And I encourage everyone to check you out and go to your website and your Instagram and learn more about you. Fantastic story. Thank you for telling us so much. Any last thoughts before we go?
Don't stop believing is my last thought. Is all I went through is, and I didn't know what the answer would be, is I just knew that I never gave up. So even when you're in your darkest hour, hold on, because that little shimmer of light may shine through at any time.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for listening and watching to the Love Fruit podcast. If you want to learn more from us, you can go to fruitfest.co.uk, and we have the UK Fruit Fest at the end of July. You can check that out. And we have our Fruity Fridays on a Friday night. So you can join us with that as well. But thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you in another episode of the Love Fruit podcast.